Hello, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited about this series of videos where over the next 9 videos, I am going to chat with a member of our goal setting community about their Enneagram type and how it relates to their goals. So I'm gonna give a quick intro to what is the Enneagram and what does it mean? What am I gonna talk about in these videos? I'm gonna plop this intro in front of each of the videos in case you only click on the one that is your type. But if you are watching more than one of these Enneagram videos, click the timestamp in the description to jump to the chat part of the video. So let's start with what is the Enneagram. The Enneagram is a personality test that breaks people up into 9 distinct personality types. And just like other personality tests, each of us have a little bit of all 9 types in us somehow. But the Enneagram pulls forward which one is your core desire, which one is dominant over the rest, your core desires, your core fears, what really gets you going. And again, just like every other personality test, there is so much information out there, and everything you read, every book, every article is going to give you different information about the different types. And so there might be some things I share that you completely relate to and some things I don't relate to. And then there might be some things in the other type videos that you relate to as well. I also want to make sure you know there is a lot of information related to the Enneagram that we're not going to get into in these videos. There are subtypes, there are wings. Wings just mean you have a secondary Enneagram that is one of the 2 types next to yours. You do actually lean to both of them, but you usually have a stronger one. So if you are very interested in how this can impact your goals, I would encourage you to watch not just your type, but also the 2 next to your type that could be your wings. But we, again, are not going to go into that, and I'm not chatting with each individual about their wing type. I also want to remind you, I'm not an expert. This is not my area of expertise. I did do a lot of research and preparation for these videos, and most of the information that I am sharing is coming from a couple of places. So the first one is this book that I read. It's called, the lighting is not totally working. It's called The Honest Enneagram by Sarah Jane Case, who I also love following on Instagram. I read about all of the types in this book and used a lot of it in my conversations with everybody, as well as this one, which is Take Care of Your Type by Christina Wilcox. So a lot of what I reference can be found in these books if you're looking for more information. I also follow a lot of great Instagram accounts that share a lot of both fun and helpful things related to the Enneagram. And so over the course of the videos, I will pop up some fun things and you'll see the Instagram handle captioned at the bottom, and I will leave the Instagram accounts linked down below as well. Those are sort of the ongoing places that I get my Enneagram information and just learn a little bit more about myself. So the last thing I want to let you know is as we go through each of the chats, I'm going to be talking about that type as a whole, some of the strengths of that type and how it relates to goals, and then some of the struggles that that type will have and how to overcome that to help you achieve your goals. One of the biggest takeaways in all the research I did for these videos and as it relates to the Enneagram is we're not trying to change ourselves. We're trying to learn how we operate and what drives us and how to utilize that to achieve our goals. And that one of the main reasons why we do struggle to achieve our goals is that we try to do it like everybody else, right? Maybe you watch videos of people on YouTube or follow them on Instagram and you try to achieve your goals in the exact same way that they are, but you're a totally different personality type than them. And there is a quote from one of the books that I don't want to mess up. It says, "One of the biggest mistakes I see my clients make is that they try to get the results they want using the tactics of someone else." So at the end of the day, I hope that these videos help you learn a little bit more about yourself and some tactics that can help you achieve your goals based on your Enneagram personality type. All right. Hello, Michelle. Welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for being a part of this. So we're going to kick it off with just a quick introduction. So I would love for you to introduce yourself and share with everybody where you live, what do you do for work, what do you do during the day, and what do you do for fun?
My name is Michelle, and I live in a Chicago suburb. And I am a recent retiree. I was a teacher for like 35 years. And I was one of those people that retired during the pandemic. So my very last quarter was on Zoom. So yeah, it was kind of an interesting way to end a career, but
for sure.
Recently I started subbing a little bit.
Okay.
I've gone back to do that. And, you know, when I retired, I thought I would see all my friends and travel and do all this fun stuff. But unfortunately, because of the pandemic, that didn't all happen. But
was that always your retirement timeline, or did the pandemic kind of speed it up?
No, it had always been. I had put in for retirement 3 years earlier. I had some family members that were going to need a little bit more help. And so, yeah, that was always the plan. But yeah, so now I'm just trying to figure out what this retirement thing looks like. And mostly I've been trying to declutter. I had to quickly move all my teaching materials out of my classroom. So they're still in a storage unit. So I'm like working slowly through all of that stuff, trying to declutter that. And I've taken some online art classes and some fun things. So,
okay. What did you teach? What subject?
I was a classroom teacher for about half my career. I taught 4th grade and 5th grade. And then most recently I was a special ed teacher.
Okay.
So in an elementary building.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that very much. All right. If you are comfortable sharing, I would also love for everyone to hear about what your top goals are for 2022.
So my goals are, first of all, like decluttering. Like I said, I have 35 years of school materials I'm trying to work through. And then just kind of a lot of just stuff around my home that, you know, my kids are grown now and they're mostly out of the house. So just like getting all of their stuff out of here and just stuff that has just piled up over the years. I never had a chance to go through because I was working full time. So
sure,
that's my number one goal. I'm also just trying to stay healthy and active. So that's a second goal. And then third goal is just to be able to like spend more time with my friends and family that I haven't really had a chance to in the past. So
both working, and then obviously we've all been struggling to see friends and family in the last few years. Yeah. All right. So during our session, or I don't know, session is a weird word. Interview also feels like a weird word. So I don't even know what to call it, but I'm going to pop up some fun, like little slides, just some fun things about lots of different Enneagram types. So you are a type 5. This is Enneagrams at an amusement park. Do you feel like you relate to this line?
Yes, I'm always the one prepared with all the materials.
I love that.
Nap and Fast Pass.
I love that so much. Are you a Disney fan?
Yeah, we were supposed to go to Disney World about a month ago, and my husband got appendicitis.
Oh my gosh. Is he okay now?
So he's okay now, but we had to reschedule our trip.
That is such a bummer. Oh my gosh. Well, hopefully you get to go back again soon. So I want you to comment below if you are also a type 5 as we start to dive into like the specifics about being a type 5, some strengths and some struggles that a type 5 might have while it comes to goals. But I want to go ahead and mention both for you, Michele, and for anybody watching, as I mentioned in the intro, every individual is going to have every type within them. It's just which one is the strongest, which one is the most important when it comes to your fears and your desires. So there might be some things I say today that you totally don't relate to at all. And you're like, that's not me. And then there might be things that you're like, yeah, 100%, this is me. It doesn't mean that you're the wrong type. Like you didn't mistype yourself. It's just that we're not all going to be exactly the same as everybody else. That is that type. So before we jump in, I do have a general Enneagram question for you, which is if you remember how you discovered the Enneagram personality test and if you remember how you determined your type.
I think I first heard about the Enneagram through, I think, Michael Hyatt's podcast. Mm-hmm. He was talking a little bit about it. I had never heard about it at that point in time. And then I'm part of Wild University. And so I know they did like a little major one month about it. So I kind of watched a little bit of the videos on there. And then I did pay to take like an online test. I don't remember which company or whatever I did it through.
But. That's okay. There's so many different tests you can take. And if I haven't already said this, you can take all of those tests all day long, but also you're probably going to get multiple answers sometimes for which one it could be. And I always recommend like just learning about them, reading about them, and then usually you can figure out which one you identify with. All right. So a couple more fun slides. These are things that the Enneagram types love. So this first one, a new book or journal?
Oh, yes. Well, as a teacher too, I love all school supplies.
That makes sense. That makes sense for sure. A weekend with no plans? No, you're a planner. So you're probably like, I need it to be planned.
Yeah. Well, and I think I used to like it because I was like during the week, I was a teacher. So I was just so busy the whole week. Like in the weekends, I kind of liked to be like not having to do anything.
Sure. This might also lean into the fact that I think they, at least in the research that I did, type 5s tend to lean more introverted. And so they like not having plans for the weekend. And then the last one here is your favorite podcast. You're a podcast fan?
Oh, yes.
Do you want to share? Do you have a favorite that you like don't miss every single week?
I like The Lazy Genius.
Huh, I love that one too. Such a good podcast.
What else do I like? Well, right now I'm doing Organized 365, listening to all the organization ones.
Okay. Well, like you said, that's your top goal. And so that's a
Yeah.
great podcast to listen to. All right. Before we get into some struggles and strengths of the type 5 Enneagram, we're going to do an overview of what the type 5 is and what is common for a type 5. So they call the type 5, they have like names for all the Enneagrams, the investigator, where the basic desire is to be self-reliant, competent, and useful. And their basic fears are being inept, incapable, and depleted. Do you feel like you relate to that?
Oh, for sure. Yes.
Yeah.
I never like to ask questions of people because I feel like I'm supposed to know the answers, or I don't want people to know I don't know.
But at the same time, based on my research, you always want to know the answers. You like want all the
yes, I do.
And then their ultimate motivators are to be smart, to get to the bottom of things, right? To know all the answers, and then to ultimately protect themselves with all of that information.
Mm-hmm.
So if any of this relates to you as a type 5, I feel like this is a pretty good summary. Again, a lot of my research said that type 5s, they want to know all the information. They want to have all of the knowledge related to a specific topic and tend to want to be experts in a specific topic.
I think whenever I find myself stressed, that's when I start buying a bunch of books. Or I start going to the library, or I start, going on the internet, and then it's just like going deeper and deeper.
Yes. That, and we will talk a little bit when we get to the struggles about one of the struggles of a type 5 being to just spend time researching instead of taking action on things. Mm-hmm. We will get there. But before we get into the struggles, I want to talk about strengths. This is a quote from one of the Enneagram books I referenced, that it's not honest to pretend that we don't have flaws, but it's also not honest to pretend that we don't have strengths. And the goal here is not to change ourselves or to change what we are good at. It's to lean into them. So we're going to talk about 3 of the strengths, the top strengths of a type 5. So the first one is that they're typically very decisive. So my guess is that you don't usually struggle with picking the goals that you want to focus on. Is that fair?
Oh no, I know exactly what I want to do.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. That was my interpretation of everything that I read, was that there are definitely types that feel like they can't figure out what goals they want to work on, but a type 5 is like, no, I know that this is what I want to work on.
I can't even imagine not knowing.
I love that. The next one is that they're very smart and self-reliant. Again, talking about that knowledge and knowing what they want. Yeah. I feel like that when it relates to goals, it's leaning into that and trusting yourself, right? Knowing that you know what's best for you. And maybe, I don't know if you struggle with like seeing other people's goals and you're like, oh, maybe that would be a good goal, but like leaning into knowing that you know what's best for you.
Yeah, I think I usually do. I think usually when I see other people's goals, it's more like, oh, like I have that same goal, but they're doing it a different way. Okay. And so then it gives me more ideas on maybe other sub goals, I don't know, or processes. Or
other paths to take to get to that same goal. Yeah. That's interesting. My guess though is that as a 5, you probably did the research, and the way that you're going about it's probably the best way, or the best way for you anyways.
Yeah, I probably don't usually change what I'm doing. Okay. I think, maybe later I'll do it that way.
Right. Yeah. If my way doesn't end up working, I'll consider that other option. The other strength that I really read about related to type 5s is knowing your limits, is that you know when you need to say no and what boundaries you do need to set. Do you feel like that's true?
I think it's true. I don't know if that's so much my personality. I think some of that is partly my age. I think like I know a little bit more now, like what will be successful and what won't be.
Sure.
Because I have that experience. So
that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. So, I mean, if you are a type 5 that feels like you don't know your limits, maybe that just comes with some experience. But I think maybe it's just getting the confidence to say no and being open to not only knowing the boundary and the limit, but enforcing the boundary and the limit, which we all struggle with that.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Yeah, for sure. Those are some common strengths of the type 5 and how they might relate to goals. Let's talk about potentially some struggles. I want to again reiterate, this is another quote that I really liked. That was from the other book that I read. The core goal of using the Enneagram is to grow into your best, most authentic self. So these struggles that we're going to talk about, we're not trying to change them. We're not trying to necessarily like be something that we're not. We're just trying to take the struggles that we know that we have, especially as it relates to goals, and how can we embrace those and you actually utilize them into strengths. There is a common phrase that I also came across a lot while I was researching the Enneagram that says sometimes our most common struggles is our strengths on overdrive, like when our strengths are like to the extreme. So the first one is that I found that type 5s have trouble breaking things down. They can see where they want to go at the end of it and the big picture, but they can't, especially with some goals, you don't know how. There's no way, there's no information on how to break it down. And so they're like, well, there's no way, and I can't break it down.
I think sometimes instead of not knowing how to break it down, it's more, I try to bite more off than I can chew.
Okay.
So I don't break it down enough.
Okay. Do you feel like if you're not breaking it down enough, or I guess another way to say this, in order to break it down more, do you feel like you need to spend more time on breaking it down? Or do you feel like you get frustrated trying to figure out the perfect way to break it down?
I think I just overestimate how much I can accomplish.
Okay.
And so I end up just doing too much and don't break it down enough. And if I do break it down enough to a very small step, it doesn't seem like it's very much. So I feel silly like making that as a step when it's like, oh, that'll take me one day and I'll be done.
I can absolutely relate to that as well. We all feel that like inadequacy almost of our goals. Like that's not big enough. Like that's not exciting enough for you. It's probably, that's not that's not the most self-reliant. That's not the most intelligent option that I could go after. It seems too silly and too small.
Right.
But if you don't break it down that small, then you're probably never going to start. One of the tips I had related to this, if you do feel like as a type 5, you struggle with breaking things down, is don't worry about breaking down the whole thing. Start with the next 3 steps. Give yourself a limit of like, I just need the next 3 steps. And then I will do those. And then once I'm done with those, then I will figure out the next steps instead of feeling the need to know the entire path from like A to Z. So the next one, which we already kind of referenced, is the need to over research and the need to know all of the information and all of the details related to a particular goal. I already see you laughing at this one.
Yes, that is definitely me.
I don't know if it's obvious, but the big tip here would be to set a time limit for yourself, right? Say, I'm allowed to research this particular thing or this particular goal for 20 minutes. And then when it's done, it's done. And it's like, I'm moving on and I'm getting started. Because I'm sure you could probably research forever.
Yeah. And sometimes I'll do like, well, I'm going to read 3 books and that's it. And then take that information, or I'm going to consider 6 options and that's it. Okay. And then pick the best of those 6.
Okay. And putting those limits on yourself of like, an example of this, and I'm not a type 5, but I did this recently, like a concrete example, if someone's looking for one, is with hotels for travel. I mean, I could have looked at every single option, and I am good at that. Like if I'm online shopping, I'll look at everything in the store. I'm like, I need to know everything and make sure I'm not missing anything that I could possibly want.
Yeah. Until you're on like the 6th page and like, really, there's got to be something on the first 4.
Right. If I don't want something on the first 4, like, why am I still on this website? But with hotels for traveling, I was like, I could look at every single option, or I could say, here's what's important. And like, for me, it was location, the price point, and like the size of the bed. And once I found something that fit within those parameters, it was like, you're done. It's pick that option. Don't, instead of looking at all of the options and then picking your priorities based on that, it's picking your priorities before you start the research.
It's a good idea.
I feel like that would also be really helpful for anything that you're trying to research. So then another struggle that I saw a lot of the books talking about related to type 5 was putting up emotional walls and not wanting to share feelings, to share emotions. Not that you don't have them, having the feelings, having the emotions. I mean, we're human, we all have them. And as type 5s, you have them as well. You just don't typically share them with other people. You feel like that's something you struggle with?
Yeah, I think so. I even think like when I was a teacher, like I was very collaborative. I worked well with everyone and I felt like I got along with a lot of people. I felt like I had a lot of friends. And then like after I retired, I realized like I didn't share a lot of my personal things or know a lot of personal things about them. Like it was all very work related. And I think it's just like, I just kind of kept that distance.
Sure. That absolutely sounds like exactly what I was reading about type 5. So one of the first tip, it's not really a tip, but the first thing I want to remind you is that like your feelings are valid and your emotions are valid. And like, if you want to share them, people want to hear them. Like I'm sure they would have loved to hear a little bit more about like your personal life and some of those other things. But at the same time, you don't have to share. I feel like sometimes you feel pressure to share, and it's like, well, I don't want to share all my emotions, and so I'm just going to share none of them.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you can choose what you want to share. And the same thing goes like with goals. Like you probably sometimes feel pressure to share all of your goals with like everybody, but you don't necessarily want to. So instead you're going to share none of them. You're going to just like, I'm going to keep them all close to me. And so I think it's maybe working a little bit on what's that in between, like figuring out what you're comfortable sharing and share a little bit, but not feeling like you have to share everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there was a pop-up I meant to pop up earlier, which is common thoughts of each Enneagram type. So for type 5, it says, I just need some time to myself.
Yes, I'm a morning person, and I get up and I like have all my plans, and I just need that time, like just to set the day before anybody else gets up.
Yeah, I totally get that. And even if you're not a morning person, maybe it's finding that time of day where you get you time by yourself. And it doesn't have to be in the morning. I know that a lot of people talk about the morning being the best time to do that. And it's before everybody else is asking things of you. It is probably the best time. But if you're not a morning person, it's not the best time. So maybe it's during lunch or right after work or right before bed, depending on, it doesn't have to be like your peak energy to be the best time for you to be alone. So after going through all of those strengths and struggles, do you have any questions? If you could ask one goal related question that you struggle with, what would that be? Or what would be your biggest struggle you feel like you have?
I think with me, like I'm really good at the planning part,
Okay.
and then it's the following through and doing part.
Okay.
And I think part of that has to do with just overthinking things and
Yep.
like wanting it to all be perfect before I even start.
Yep.
And I really just need to start.
Absolutely. So one of the things I think might help you with that or think through that is the best way to know if something is going to work, this goes back to your experience comment, is trying it. Right? Like you could research all day long and you're going to find a lot of information via research about what works and what doesn't work. But the best way to know if something works or doesn't work is to actually just do it and to see if it works for you. And so maybe thinking about like, okay, by taking this action, it's almost like an experiment of like, I'm going to learn what is going to work and what doesn't work by starting to take action and using that information to then take better action.
Again, teaching, we call that action research.
Oh,
trying
there's a word for it.
Yeah, trying it, seeing how it works, and then making decisions off of that.
Yeah. So I think the same thing. I mean, I think this is true for any type and related to goals, but is that we need to take action in order to learn what works or what doesn't. But I think for someone who's a type 5, it's reminding yourself of that, because that research, it's a type of research, and you like research and learning. And so reminding yourself that taking action is a form of research.
That's true. That's a good mindset. I like thinking about it that way.
Yeah. Especially, it's as somebody who is going to value that learning and that knowledge of what works and what doesn't work. And then, I mean, having a way to track that, right? Having a place that you're going to write down what comes of your action research, right? Like where you're going to document that information that you learn. Maybe having that set up in advance will also inspire you to take action.
Yeah, like a list of questions to help you evaluate whether it worked or not.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that idea. I feel like that's a really concrete, actionable like takeaway that you can implement. And even if it's just one question, right? It depends on how big the action is, right? If it's like a really big action step or a really big goal, maybe you have a list of questions. If it's something small that you're trying, maybe it's one. Maybe the question is, does this work for me? Right? Maybe that's the question: is does this work for me? Or it can be more specific, like does this work at this time of day, or does this length of time work well for me? And then I think reminding yourself that making the step a little bit smaller is not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It doesn't mean that you're not like accomplishing the things you want to do by making it smaller and breaking it down more. Because once you have made it smaller, it does make it easier to take action.
Yes, it does. Yeah. And you feel a lot more satisfaction that you accomplished something.
Yeah.
Even if it was small, at least it's another thing you can check off that you did.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that excitement of checking the thing off is then going to inspire you to do more and to take more action. So the last little pop-up here is just something fun, but it is notes for each Enneagram type. So the one for the type 5 says that we need you. It's just a reminder of that we need someone who wants to learn all the information before they take action. Otherwise, if we didn't have people doing research and getting the information, we would all just be flying blind, basically, right? All the research we do is likely someone who is somewhat like a type 5 doing that research before. And then I think it's that reminder to share things, to share your goals, share your emotions, share your personal tidbits, and that people are excited about that and appreciate that. Before we close it out, is there anything else that you would love to add? Any other tip or thing you've discovered goal related that any other type 5 might benefit from?
No, I just think I think the biggest thing is like that overthinking and just getting some boundaries so that you don't just continue to spin your wheels and be able to, stop the research and start the action. So.
I love that. I feel like that is the tagline for the type 5 and goals. Stop the research, start the action.
Yes.
I love ending on that. Awesome. Well, Michele, thank you again so much for joining me today. And thank you to everyone who has watched. If you found this helpful, especially if you're a type 5, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you're new here, please click that subscribe button. We've got types 6 through 9 coming soon. Thank you, everybody.